It's 4:30 in the morning, Braamfontein, Johannesburg. The first asylum seeker arrives at the Home Affairs offices and settles down for a long wait, knowing that there is a good chance that he won't even be seen today. This is a story of refugees, of people seeking safety and peace in a country ill-equipped to deal with them. These are the cues where understaffing, mistreatment, and alleged bribery turn hope into desperation. Day after day, week after week, these asylum seekers come for the papers that will make them legal. This is their story. This is the Democratic Republic of Congo, at war with itself for 3 years. Robert Kechai was never politically active, but became a victim of circumstances.
I was an electrical technician back in the DRC. Life was terrible back then. I was repairing telephones and communication equipment, so I got accused of collaborating with the rebels, and I had to leave.
Robert, his then pregnant wife, and 2 small children hid on a cargo train to escape arrest. When they finally arrived in South Africa in July last year, their horror began.
We had just arrived in Johannesburg, and we came here to the Lloyd Hotel. The police were already here, and they stopped me. They wanted to see my papers. I had just arrived and I didn't have any, so I got arrested. I was locked up and beaten. It was terrible. Finally, I found myself in Lindela Repatriation Center. Lindela is not a good place to be. Not a good place for a human. Not a place you can keep your mind sane, because the way they treat people there is not human. They use dogs which bite people. They use tear gas, and brutal security men beat you with baton sticks. People are treated like animals at Lindela.
Robert was kept in Lindela for 26 days before someone heard his case and he was released. Receiving a little money from his family in Europe, Robert struggles to feed his family and find somewhere to live.
This is where I live now. It is a 5 by 5 meter room that 2 families share. 2 families with 6 children. It costs 750 rand a month, which is expensive for someone who hasn't got anything to do. Life is really difficult. We have to share. If you don't share, it's difficult to survive.
Julia and her 3 children live with Robert. She arrived in South Africa 18 months ago, fleeing the civil war in Angola. She became separated from her husband and 2-year-old daughter. They are still somewhere in Angola.
When I arrived here, life was really difficult. I couldn't get in contact with him. It was only later that I heard that my child and my father had been separated. He had been shot in the leg, so he couldn't join us, nor could he do anything to help us. I don't know what has happened to my daughter. I believe God is taking care of her like He takes care of all children. And I hope that one day, somehow, we are all going to meet again. And then everything is going to be all right. It really hurts me to talk about it, but I hope that one day I'm going to see her and her father again.
Julia's life is a daily struggle. While waiting for the outcome of her refugee application, her priority is trying to feed her children and keep them safe.
I have a baby, and each month I take her to the hospital. The other 2 are old enough to go to school, but they don't go because I don't have the money. So they stay at home with me. Life is tough. Sometimes if I have something to eat, we share it together, but often there is nothing.
South Africa has signed both the UN and OAU Conventions on Refugees. We therefore have to give asylum to refugees if they can prove that they fled their country in fear of their lives. Others are illegal immigrants. They can never receive refugee status and can never legally live in South Africa. Assessing who is a genuine refugee and who isn't is a complicated process. Brian Mongomo's case was easy to determine. He ran a newspaper in Malawi that was critical of the government. His life and that of his family was in danger. They fled to South Africa. He has newspaper cuttings proving his life was at risk. Most cases are not clear-cut, as most simply cross our borders and hope to stay. South Africa's tolerance towards foreigners is diminishing. Why should we care about refugees?
Humanity owes it to itself to recognize that it has to care for itself. And when one presents himself from one country into another, it's really an extension of that recognition that we are one people, and when one section of us is in dire need of assistance, we should be there to help one another.
We are told every day that the country cannot afford to share its resources with all these hordes of people that are coming from out there. And I really want to question the validity of this. We've only got 61,000 refugees and asylum seekers in total in this country. And when you compare with a country like Zambia, for example, that's hosting something like more than 500,000 refugees within their country, and it's a much poorer country than we are, then one begins to wonder what we are driving at as a country.
It would be a great tragedy, and I think an irony, if the government of South Africa today did not recognize that refugees have something to offer. Really, I think it would be a great tragedy. Because when I look at the leadership of this country, most of them were refugees elsewhere.
There are asylum seekers who are skilled, educated, and could make a contribution towards South African society. But as foreigners, their skills become irrelevant.
I'm a Cameroonian, and I'm a medical worker by profession.
I learned 3 years in university. I'm a teacher.
I'm an electrical engineer. Yeah, you can see this way I'm managing because I can't have a job here in South Africa.
I've forgotten about my degrees and all that because I just knew I can't do anything about it. Yeah, they are useless to me.
Up until 1998, Raymond Sama was content with his life in Cameroon. He had a close, united family and never thought he would have to leave them.
I really love staying in my country. As you know, home is home, and it's the best place you can spend your life in. Because when you are in trouble, there are people around you to take care of you.
Raymond's life changed overnight when police wanted to arrest his father, an outspoken member of the secessionist group in Cameroon. Most of his family were arrested, and he left.
You never know what will happen to you when you are arrested. Some people get killed, some people are never seen, some stay in jail indefinitely. So I decided, rather than being arrested or being killed, I better get out of the country. Yeah, this is Portia, this is Tabitha, this is Stephen. They are all professional hairdressers.
Raymond runs a hairdressing salon and employs 4 South Africans. Despite this, Raymond has been accused by other South Africans of taking away their jobs and dirtying their streets.
Those abuses do come time and again. We are used to it, and it's just like, I mean, it's a way of life now. We just accept it and keep moving.
Okay.
The feeling of being unwelcome never goes away. Genuine asylum seekers are often branded as illegal immigrants. When police stop foreigners on suspicion and demand to see their permits, having the necessary papers is often no insurance against harassment. Operation Crackdown was a crime sweep that targeted criminals and illegal immigrants. But in this operation early last year, some policemen allegedly didn't draw the line between illegal and legal immigrants.
That's one of the very ugly things that happened to me here in South Africa. I will never forget that for the rest of my life, because it wasn't my fault that I was arrested, you know. Police officers were asking me for papers, and I did give my papers to 4 people, But the 4th guy decided to keep my paper and told me it was fake. Even when I was put in that van, I kept begging for that paper. And so he decided to keep it and told me he would bring it to the station. Those who had their papers were free. I stood there the whole day and I couldn't see that guy, the police officer who took my papers. And I was taken to Lindela and locked up there for 12 days.
Most asylum seekers accept such obstacles as a part of everyday life. Under the new Refugee Act, asylum seekers are given permits which prohibit them from working or studying until their refugee status is determined, and this can take years.
So I think it's unconstitutional, actually, because our constitution states clearly that refugees should have access to these rights, and therefore if we deny them the right to work, the right to study, we are violating our own constitution.
The system encourages breaking the law. We are obliged from time to time to go against the law, one aspect or the other, in order to survive. Because if you have to respect the law as it is, then you're just as well choosing to die.
There is no support mechanism for food. There is no support mechanism for accommodation. What does he do? The least he can do is to press for a speedy determination of his case, so that he can begin perhaps to look for work, any type of work.
But the determination process is anything but speedy. Julia has been in the country for 18 months and still no decision on her status has been made. She therefore has to constantly renew her permit.
Vous êtes là 2 mois pour rentrer.
Sometimes they give you an extension for a month, sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes a few days. You keep coming on a regular basis, and it gives you the impression that they like seeing you suffer.
I mean, I know there's budgetary constraints, but this is the busiest office in the whole country. So they need to send here more staff. I mean, at the moment they've got 2 status determination officers for all these people. I mean, it's just not possible. It just makes me angry because, I mean, particularly the Somalis and Ethiopians at the moment, they haven't got inside here since November the 17th. That's when the woman, the RSDO, the refugee status determination officer, who did those countries, left. And they haven't got a replacement.
Status determination officers, or SDOs, decide the fate of all these asylum seekers. The SDOs at Braamfontein Home Affairs have been accused of a lot of things, of personal biases and not knowing enough about the countries they're assessing. A prime example is Raymond. He recently heard that his refugee application has been rejected.
Yeah, this is the letter that was issued to me from the Department of Home Affairs, telling me to leave the country in 30 days. As we can see here, the Department of Home Affairs stated that Cameroon is a unitary and a multi-party democracy, and there are no reports of harassment or persecution by government to its citizens or opposition parties. I mean, this is gross exaggeration of what is happening in Cameroon, because this is proof that the Department of Home Affairs knows little or nothing about Cameroon.
Braamfontein Home Affairs has rejected all Cameroonian applications for these types of reasons. And yet, Cameroon has been accused by Amnesty International of serious human rights abuses. Raymond is now appealing the decision. His fate will be decided in 3 months' time, but if he does have to leave, his shop will close.
And I think that with all these people here employed, these South Africans here, it's reducing a lot of unemployment in South Africa, and I'm contributing so much to the South African economy. If I have to leave South Africa, I don't know what these 4 people are going to do.
Whatever Raymond's fate, his case is being looked at by Home Affairs. Others struggle to even get through the door.
It has been so bad for me that each time I think of this country and my experiences, it's like I'm thinking of my death. I'm thinking of the time when I'm already dead and gone.
For Robert, Julia, and the thousands of other asylum seekers trying to become legal is the hardest battle they face. All asylum seekers have to get their permits from the Department of Home Affairs, but just getting into the Braamfontein office is difficult.
Open the door, please. Open the door, my purpose. Open the door, open.
It was very difficult to get assistance from Home Affairs. It took me about 2 months before I could get a permit. I went there on a daily basis. Sometimes I was told to spend the night there. I was there every day, and they never saved me.
It was 3 months before I got the permit. So for 3 months I was illegal in South Africa, due to no fault of my own.
It's now 7 a.m. The lines are getting longer, and frustrations are mounting.
We've been told to come every day, come tomorrow, and that's how it's always been. So we call it a job. It's our job. We are here in the morning and we go back in the evening. So it's our job being here every day.
At 7:30, only those people renewing permits are allowed in. A long line of new arrivals must wait.
The officers here said that they need somebody who has a passport with a visa, South African visa. So we don't have to wait here.
Can somebody who is fleeing away from war have a passport, have a visa on, have all the things that they're asking for?
This for human rights, man.
Yeah.
Human rights for South Africa.
Every person has the right to seek asylum, even if they don't have identity documents. Those with papers should be seen without question, but this isn't happening.
It's all done on a whim, basically, you know. Kind of depends on what side of the bed they get out of. That's how I feel it works. There's no system, there's no policy.
According to the Human Rights Committee, only about 8 to 12 people get in. The day we filmed, things were
It's
different.
completely unusual. I mean, this is just basically to prevent you seeing how the process works out. I mean, I can guarantee you once they're in, if you wait here another 10 or 15 minutes, they'll be straight back out.
It wasn't 15 minutes, but half an hour later, and they were all sent back out.
They told me to come back after 2 weeks.
What happens if you are arrested by the police? What are they going to do?
I've got 3 months here.
According to many asylum seekers, money talks at Braamfontein Home Affairs. Accusations of bribery and mistreatment come up time and again. We persuaded an asylum seeker to try and record what goes on. We fitted him out with a small hidden camera. For his own safety, he did not want to be identified in this program. He calls himself Jean.
There has never been any proof of these things, and I was hoping that through this, we could get to see one or two things which the general public wouldn't know about and which has never been proven.
The bearded man in the white shirt is a Home Affairs interpreter. Although he is only a volunteer, he is accused of also being a gatekeeper, taking hundreds of rands from asylum seekers in return for giving them access to Home Affairs. Here the interpreter meets an asylum seeker. Arrangements are made for a bribe. They go to a shop nearby. Hundreds of rands change hands. After receiving the money from the asylum seeker, the interpreter gives him change. The bribe, it seems, has worked. The transaction complete, the interpreter and asylum seeker walk back to Home Affairs. Some of this money will allegedly be given to officials who make sure that the asylum seeker is attended to. According to all the asylum seekers we spoke to, this is often the only way to get in. We also heard that some officials take bribes directly, but whilst trying to expose this, things went horribly wrong. Jean was discovered with the hidden camera. He was arrested. After this, Home Affairs cancelled their interview with Special Assignment and issued this statement. Unbeknown to us, a person filmed secretly, which is in bad taste. Home Affairs therefore declines to give any further cooperation. In the days that followed, we witnessed a series of legal battles that were fought as Home Affairs tried to send Jean back to his country of origin without following the due process of law.
I think from the moment I walked in, they recognized me because somewhere along the line they said, on Monday we saw you with the TV people. The staff members, everybody came in and a lot of things were being said. They made it clear that I was going to be deported.
Things moved swiftly. Accused of being a spy, Jean was taken to Lindela Repatriation Center, the last port of call before deportation. According to his lawyers, Home Affairs was acting illegally in threatening to deport him without a hearing. After only one night in Lindela, he was told he would be deported the next morning. He managed to make a phone call to the law clinic at Wits University. They lodged an urgent application to stop the deportation.
Applicant. The first one is applicant is him. Second, Chief Immigration Officer, Home Affairs. I am in. Yeah.
Here's a copy for you.
Signed.
This is a copy of the signed papers, ready for you to go. Go now.
At 11:30 that night, the lawyers rushed to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, we told them you can't come in.
Sure. In order for a deportation to be legal, the asylum seeker's case has to follow a certain legal procedure. A hearing has to be held and the case against him to be proved. In Jean's case, none of this happened.
I sort of have the impression that they just wanted to deport me fast before any of those things came to pass. And at the same time, it gives me the impression that I was a threat.
Well, quite literally at the 11th hour, we were contacted by the state attorney on whom we had served the papers, saying that Home Affairs had now eventually agreed not to deport our client till the whole matter is resolved. He's still in detention, and that's a question which we're going to try and bring before the court tomorrow.
While the lawyers fought the department's decision on the outside, inside Lindela, none of this seemed to matter. Officials were processing his deportation.
While I had information from the attorney that everything was going all right and there was no reason for me to be deported, the arrangements were already being made there. The photograph was taken. I saw the ticket and the form being filled and everything, and I was surprised.
As the lawyers' efforts intensified, Home Affairs eventually agreed to release him from Lindela.
All our clients who have tried to highlight corruption within the Department of Home Affairs have subsequently faced harassment. We believe our client will face hardship when dealing with the department in future.
The very next day, he was given a letter turning down his refugee application. It stated that his refugee status had been rejected, that his claims of political persecution in Cameroon were unfounded. The letter says, "You are a spy and cannot be accepted in South Africa." It infers that because he was a so-called spy for special assignment, he was also wanted by police in Cameroon for being a spy. The letter ends, "You are not an asylum seeker and are abusing the asylum procedure for your personal interests."
There is a clear pattern of behavior with the Department of Home Affairs. The department capitulates at the last minute when threatened with an action with an indication that the Department of Home Affairs does not want its policies challenged in court.
If I have any regrets, it's just that I never succeeded in doing what I wanted to do, to show what I thought I could show so people could understand.
The lawyers are currently working on Jean's appeal. His future is uncertain.
When the people you were counting on to understand you and help you are the ones now against you, the ones making life difficult for you, and then everything is very uncertain.
Robert, Julia, and Raymond are also afraid that appearing on this program may jeopardize their refugee status in South Africa. Their fate is currently in the hands of Home Affairs officials in Braamfontein. For now, they remain strangers in a strange land.